So you've just hired a new employee, and you're all excited. They're excited. What do you do on day one?
Yeah, that's a good question. And over the years, I've seen companies handle day one differently from others. Certainly, the more successful companies have a formal onboarding protocol in place to have employees sign, let's say, any mandatory paperwork. We're talking about I-9s, W-4s, possibly getting the employee set up for workers' comp, making sure the employee is familiar with timekeeping systems, and then we get into the area of what is voluntary, what is recommended. And for me, it's going to depend on the type of company and what the employee is doing, but looking at things like an employment agreement, to sort of spell out the arrangement between the company and the employee. Is that a day one thing? It can be. It could be before day one. It could be a few days in as well. But just having that type of thing, set up for the employee, you want to make sure that you have that together. And then looking at something like an employee handbook, which is your compilation of workplace policies and procedures. That's something that you may want to go over with the employee, if not day one, then in the first few days. So you're putting the employee on notice about your expectations for the employee. What are the workplace policies? How do you do certain things? Who do you go to when you have questions about certain things? So on top of the mandatory requirements like the I-9s, the W-4s, perhaps the workers' comp, or maybe any state registrations, then you look into the recommended items, the employment agreements, the handbooks, possibly some training. And then I always like to say, how about some team building with this new employee too?
Do
Maybe
those
taking the employee out to lunch.
do those documents, do they have to be complicated, or are they like what?
They don't, I mean, I'm an attorney, so I don't think they're that complicated, but you can, if it's an employment agreement, they're typically written by us attorneys, right? I'm sure you've worked on some, and we'll talk about the IP side of things in a moment. But yeah, I mean, you would encourage the employee to review it. If the employee wants to hire his or her own attorney to review the agreement, that's fine. That's fair game. If there's some negotiation, be open to that as well. It's not necessarily such a bad thing, but the key is having an attorney by your side to help you implement these processes, implement the agreements, implement the handbook, and to handle any negotiations in regards to the agreement itself. Justin, for you, I'm sure when you onboard or you help a company onboard a new employee, it may vary, what you may recommend as far as intellectual property protections, if it's a normal employee or someone maybe with like a creative side of things. Can you just kind of chime in on that a little bit?
Sure. So for most startups, so it's for most startups where they're not sure yet who's going to have what role, and they've got vague ideas, you sort of err on the side of having everybody sign intellectual property agreements. Then later, as you're more established, you may have roles where somebody really, for sure that they're not going to be developing new creative works for you, or they're not going to be like all of a sudden become a software developer or that kind of thing. But starting out, it's good to err on the side of caution, and we would encourage all new employers to get a it's a proprietary information and confidentiality agreement with all of these new employees. And the idea is, employees have obligations to their employers, but it formalizes it, and it makes it so that there's no question that anything they develop belongs to the company. And so that traditionally the topics have been for that agreement have been, intellectual property. And then also it gives a chance often in those for the employee to say, well, hey, I worked on this project and I own this IP and this isn't coming. So that helps as well, so that there's some clarity there. Then it would have confidentiality, right? And as well as Like, hey, don't bring anything to our workplace that is from somewhere else. But then also you have to keep our all of our information confidential, and you have to keep our customers confidential information. Then traditionally there's been also a non-compete in some of those, depending on the type of person, but you could speak more to that because that's starting to change where I'm not seeing it as often. But those are the basic things, and it's usually one of the documents that's presented in front of the employee, and most employees are they're comfortable seeing these now because you see them all the time. But it'll save you trouble later on if you go to sell your company or you go to take on investments. As part of the process of review, somebody's going to ask for all of these documents, and so it's a good practice just to have them, have it as part of your packet, and make sure that everybody gets them signed.
Yeah, I think that's a great summary, and I think that the point that you just made about these future potential events, that's part of the reason why we're recommending agreements, because everything may seem like it'll be an indefinite relationship, everything will work out, nobody contemplates a breakup, but really what you want to do with these agreements and these documents is to protect yourself in the event that something goes wrong, in the event of a sale, things like that. I'm sure you see that in your world as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, well, it was great talking to you, and we'll do this soon.
Thanks, Justin. Have a great day.